What's up, everybody? My name is Danger Doug. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are going to be talking about Fairy Tail today, and holy crap, dude, seriously, we have an expert on our hands. Now, even though my vast knowledge of anime is tried and true here and there too, there are parts and times when I definitely need to call in some help and assistance from especially people who have way more knowledge than I do, and I think we have the perfect candidate, ladies and gentlemen. Allow me to introduce to you our mods. AwesomeKattyK, Courtney. How are you today? Oh my god, let's freaking go.
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing absolutely fantastic. And it's great to see you and great to have you on the show over here too. And again, like I mentioned before, we're going to be talking about Fairy Tail, and today's episode is going to be about the accepted season 1, if you will, for the first 48 episodes. So,
Yes.
we're going to be talking about it, and even though I'm kind of like new to the show, as in I started watching it with you guys here and there a couple of weeks ago, probably like a month ago, really, to be honest with you. Um, I may be new to the show, but she is an expert. So for all of you guys out there, dude, seriously, she has a ton of knowledge as far as fairy tale is concerned. But at the same time, we're not going to be spoiling anything after the episode 48 that ended. So if anything, there's some things that I don't know, and I'm sure that a lot of people in the fairy tale fandom already like know all this past where I'm at right now. But at the same time, we're only going to be talking about, yes, season 1. So just a little bit about the two of us before we get started. Danger Doug, been streaming on Twitch for about 2 years now, and making some YouTube videos here and there for anime reviews, and playing a couple of bits of anime games and indie games on YouTube as well. Um, Courtney, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself a little bit?
Hello. Online, I go by AwesomeKattyK. I usually do variety of things. Sometimes maybe once a month, once every 2 months. Could be either gaming, could be music covers, which music is one of my passions along with anime. And I've been friends with Danger Doug for just around a year now, and I'm glad to be on the show.
Terrific. No, yes, and again, with the whole bit with music and stuff, this anime has got a lot of music into it as well, and very heavily influential on a lot of us and whatnot, especially those of us who've grown up in the late 2000s and mid 2010s. So yeah, without further ado, let's just get started. Fairy Tail is a 328 episode anime. It's a long one, so for all of you guys out there, it is a shonen and a dark adventure fantasy anime that includes a lot of different elements of magic and whatnot. And again, the first episodes were released around 2009, and it continued all of its way up until, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, Courtney, I believe it ended somewhere around like 2018, 2019 was when the final episodes debuted. Is that about right?
The final season of Fairy Tail aired in October of 2018 and ended, I want to say, around maybe June of 2019.
Gotcha. So this is a fairly recent like end to the anime, which spanned about like the entirety of a decade for the most part, really. So it's beloved by fans worldwide. I believe like 72 million like copies of the manga have actually printed and circulated among fans all over the all over the entire world. And again, this goes to show the beloved story by Hiro Mashima from Japan, who actually wrote the story and pressed it and distributed it to fans all over the world, has taken, like with all the fans, with taking all this adventure, like pretty much over with taking the entire world by storm, pretty much. And this is the first opportunity that I've actually had to actually get into the show. But you guys can actually, if you want to go check it out, you can find it on several different streaming services from Crunchyroll, Netflix, Hulu, and even a little bits of YouTube and a couple other websites too.
Definitely.
Yes, and for today, yeah, we're gonna be talking about the first season. So again, yeah, first 48 episodes, and again, the story largely follows the group of friends that are from the Wizarding Guild's Fairy Tale, as they engage many of the challenges that come up either in several pursuits of pursuing different magical jobs here and there, or facing a lot of the different evils that also make their way here and there into their universe as well. So let's introduce our main cast of characters as we go over exactly all the crazy peoples that we're going to be talking about today. And firstly, we're going to be talking about Natsu. And oh my god, dude. Let me tell you, this guy is so wonderful. Like for real. No, Natsu, also known as the Salamander, is a fire wizard from Fairy Tail Guild, and holy crap, his boisterous, wonderful personality, kind of carefree, but just absolutely willing to go headfirst into battle, charging into it, and just absolutely going all over the place with his little companion Happy, who I believe is an Exceed, is what they're called, right?
Yes, Exceed. Hmm.
Gotcha, gotcha. It's so he's kind of like a little winged cat here and there, but even though you might think just like winged cat as might be a pet, Happy actually does have a whole lot of intelligence and has a lot of history behind his belt here and there too with the show. As far as Natsu's concerned, he's kind of looking for his adopted father, whom, um, what was his name again? Igneel?
Igneel.
Right. Yes, so he's looking for his adopted father. At least that's what the start of the show, and he kind of taught him everything about fire breathing with the dragon slaying techniques that he'd been brought up with. Taught him a lot with magic and a lot about the world here and there too. And he again is a wizard from Fairy Tale, true, but he runs into Lucy Heartfilia, who was also introduced in the first episode and who is our second main character. Um, but what are your thoughts about Natsu, Courtney?
Natsu in Japan means summer, and an ongoing storyline between Hiro Mashima and all of his manga is that the main characters are commonly named after the seasons, like with Rave Master, it's Haru, which means spring. So
Yes,
I've always found that interesting about Natsu.
very cool. Yeah, no, he's quite the guy for sure, and again, one of our main protagonists of the anime. So he is involved in so many of the different adventures, and I believe he's seen as one of the big leaders of the fairy tale group. That is making his way up to an S class rank at some point. I mean, he's currently A rank when we start the show. Is that correct? Or
We just know he's probably around A rank. He's not S
gotcha,
yet.
gotcha. Not yet, at least. I mean, I think I could assume that he's making his way possibly to S rank, but at the same time, at the start of the show, he is again one of Fairy Tail's more powerful wizards, but not one of the most powerful ones. He's one of the like B or A rank ones here and there too. Next main character on our cast is Lucy Heartfilia, and she has quite the past as we found out, being as part of the Heartfilia family, which is one of the more rich families of the world that they live in, and she's on her way to joining the Fairy Tale Guild because she sees them as one of the best wizarding guilds in the entire world. And uh, again, she runs into Natsu in the first episodes, and she kind of outs, I want to say, poser or imposter salamander with him as they're going through the first episodes. But yeah, Natsu essentially invites her to join Fairy Tail, and we largely find out about the guild pretty much through her eyes as we go through the story for the most part and seeing exactly what is going on with a lot of the different members. And as we're finding out a lot of information, we're kind of finding that out along with her as she's kind of meeting a lot of the new members of the guild. So she's a celestial wizard, which means that she uses these celestial keys to unlock a lot of spirits from the spirit worlds, which usually align from a lot of the constellations. So, like Virgo, Leo. So, Lucy's past and whatnot, with everything that's led up to it, with her family and everything, what do you think about her choice to kind of leave her family and try to pursue a career, if you will, as a guild member of Fairy Tale?
Well, at the Heartfilia estate, it was revealed that her father never really acknowledged her and that she never really had a real family, which was revealed when we saw how she tried to make a rice ball for him and he kind of slapped it away, telling her to leave even though it was her birthday. So eventually she managed to escape. She was on the run for a year, and then when she met up with Natsu, it was like she got to find out what a real family was like, and that was probably one of my favorite things about her. And a lot of people like kind of complain about Lucy for being weak, but like you have to remember that because she's from such a rich estate, she's not as accustomed to fighting as the others. And you see that how she it progressively gets better and better, but she kind of starts out like using her womanly charms to try to get what she wants.
No, that's actually a really good point. Because yeah, no, for a lot of fans out there here and there, and people who are just getting into the show could see her as relatively weak, sure, but at the same time, like considering her upbringing, like you just mentioned, it's very interesting to see exactly how much she has grown as a wizard, especially after joining Fairy Tail. Because yeah, at the start, you're right, she was kind of using a little bit of the stereotypical feminine wiles to kind of lower prices here and there in a couple of different shops here and there, and trying to make sure that she can actually like acquire some bits of magic and celestial keys for sure. um but yet she undergoes a lot of different character growth throughout the entire series, and again, as she joins Fairy Tail and whatnot, she discovers that a lot of these friends that she's meeting over here have really become her second family for the most part, and finding out a lot about the different wizards in the guilds over here, it's kind of like we're kind of following along with her as well and trying to meet everybody. And now, next main character that I want to go over, and
Well,
oh wait, no,
actually,
go ahead.
um, I remembered what I was going to say. It was the fact that we do follow a lot of the other main characters, but a lot of the inner voices are from Lucy, and I like to think that it's because she's writing her novel, and her novel is most likely centered on her adventures with Fairy Tail.
No, that's a great point. Yeah, because well, even a lot of people who see her as more of the more weaker wizards of the guilds, one of the things that we do find out about her is that she loves to write, and that yeah, you're right, she's currently like building and writing a novel of her own, and it's very interesting to even think about, like with watching the show as like we kind of progress through the series, that she could be like writing this novel pretty much as we're kind of going through this adventure with everybody. So next to our main characters, next two actually, I want to see if you could take point with this one. And this next main character is one of Natsu's biggest I don't want to say frenemies. Well, he's not really a frenemies, but like necessarily, but they do fight very often just because they're both fire and ice. And the next main character is Gray Fullbuster. Courtney, could you tell us a little bit about Gray?
We figured out that Gray's family, or hometown actually, was attacked by a demon from the books of Zareth called Deliora,
Mm-hmm.
and in doing so, he was the only survivor, and he wanted to get revenge on Deliora, which is when his master Ur and her soon Leon managed to save him from the wreckage and taught him all about ice make magic, which is also ironically how he got his stripping habit. And eventually, after Gray tries to defeat Deliora on his own, or sacrifices herself to quote unquote get rid of the darkness in his heart.
True. And yes, it's so funny. Like the one bit of trivia here and there, like learning about his character, is that he does like to take off his clothes a whole lot, and he has a propensity to do this. But at the same time, like his character is one of those like cool, calm, calculating ones. But yeah, he's in direct conflict with Natsu in a lot of different cases, especially when they're in the guild hall and whatnot. But at the same time, they're both really big allies of each other. Even though they like to scuffle every once in a while, they still are like really good friends and good allies. But at the same time, they do have some disagreements every once in a while. I will say that Gray's arc is probably one of my favorite ones to watch for sure, just because when you do find out a lot about his backstory, that it is really like well written, especially with going over his former master Or, and his kind of rival and pseudo brother, if you will, Leon.
Yes, and in an interview with Hiro Mashima, they asked if the whole stripping habit with Gray came from a habit of his own. He said no, but his friend did have a stripping habit.
His friend had a stripping habit? Oh my god, really? No, okay. But at the same time, like, no, this is like absolutely like so freaking cool to see him. I mean, no pun intended. He's a very cool character. Um, yes, next main character that I want you to talk about and tell us about is Urza. Now, Urza Scarlet, what can you tell us about her?
We first find Urza in episode 5. She is portrayed by both Natsu and Gray as a terrifying monster, which when she enters the guild, we see that from Lucy's perspective, she's one of the most sane, and she's covered in, unlike other wizards, she's also a knight. And we learned that later on, the reason why she always wears armor is to protect her heart from the pain that she suffered as a child, in which she was enslaved by a group trying to build something called the Tower of Heaven to resurrect, again, name pops up, Zareth.
Mm-hmm.
And uh, her and a group of friends, including Simon, Miliana, Sho, Jalal, um, they all eventually try to get out, and Urza finds her magic in the tower. And at that point, she's given permission to leave by Jalal, who was unfortunately possessed at the time, and she makes her way to Fairy Tale.
Right, and she is actually billed, I think, and again, correct me if I'm wrong for any of these other things. Her alias is Titania or Titania.
Titania.
Gotcha. And she's an S-class wizard who has a lot of re-equip magic with Fairy Tale Guilds, and essentially she is the most powerful female member of the Fairy Tale Guilds. And when we look at a lot of her strengths here and there in comparison with a lot of the other guild members, one thing that is a little bit different than what you normally see in the rest of Fairy Tale Guild is that she's a stickler for the rules and also making sure that she can enforce them here and there too. So she, even though she is very strict, she has an amazing heart and also goes into a lot of different situations with a good head in her shoulders. Whenever they go out to defeat any sort of evil out there, she's usually the first one to come up with a brilliant part to the plan or try to lead the guys in the right direction. Or whenever Natsu or Gray are fighting, she will tend to break them up here and there too. Or she'll just have to casually like look back at them and be like, "What's going on, boys?" And they're just like, "Oh, nothing, nothing's going on, nothing to see here. We're the best of friends, right?" But yes,
Basically.
yeah. No, she is absolutely wonderful, and it's just great to see a lot of her magic, like come through here and there. And the next main character that I want to talk about before we get to her supporting cast is actually one that we already kind of mentioned, and that is Happy, the Exceed, who's also Natsu's best buddy. And as far as Happy is concerned, his origin story. Oh my god, so freaking cool. Like episode 20, I believe, when he comes into the picture or something like that.
Around then.
Right. Yeah,
And
he
even still, we only know part of his origin story at the moment. We have to wait for a different arc for more of that.
true. Yeah, and keeping in mind that we've only seen the first 48 episodes so far, Happy's origin story comes into play just with the one episode where he hatches from one of the eggs that they find with Lysana. And it was Natsu and Lysana, who just happens to be one of our supporting characters' sisters.
Lizana.
Lizana, yeah. Sorry. Hi, I'm great with pronunciations, by the way. As Courtney well knows. But at the same time, yes. So they're taking care of this one egg, and they find out that it hatches into Happy after the fact, and it's one of those things where I think throughout the episode, the guild was experiencing a level of sadness here and there as well, and like as soon as the egg hatched, we just had this sort of mood shift in the guild to where everybody became very much more happy, and that's how he got his name. Correct me if I'm wrong in that one, though.
That's part of the reason. It also came off as when he descended, he looked as like a blue ball of happiness. So Natsu gave him the name Happy.
True, and they've been companions pretty much ever since, for the most part. And like Happy's store of knowledge, as far as the wizarding world is concerned, is very vast. He knows so many different things about all the wizards in Fairy Tale, also a lot of the different guilds that are out there in the world as well. And his power is essentially the ability to fly, to be able to carry heavy weights. Like he can carry whole characters and whatnot from place to place for the most part, but he can't do everybody, like carrying everybody at the same time. He can carry like one person or maybe two people, maybe. Um, but he also has pretty much super speed, and again, vast stores of knowledge. And as far as Happy goes, what do you think about Happy, Courtney?
I think Happy has a smart mouth in multiple ways.
Nice. What's a fun example of the smart mouth here and there?
A lot of the examples I can think of come from later episodes, but most okay. A good one is during the Loki arc. Happy basically was pretending to act as Plu's voice and said, "Darn, I thought I could keep it up for a week or so since you're so stupid."
Oh my God, no, for real. Like, thank you for bringing up that example because that one's actually one of the more hilarious more parts of the show here and there. Now, even though this is a fantasy adventure anime, there are a lot of bits of comedy in it, and yeah, him impersonating Plu a little bit is actually one of the more funny parts of the Loki arc as they were getting into it, just because he was kind of like leading Lucy on a little bit, just because. So now let's get into our supporting characters, and the first one that I want to talk about is actually the leader of the fairy tale guilds, the guildmaster Makarov. Courtney, what can you tell me about Guildmaster Makarov?
He has a big heart and he considers all of his guild members as his children and will do everything he can to protect them, even if it means sometimes that he has to break the rules to do so.
Right, yeah, because he's one of those guys who like he's willing to kind of bend or break the magic council's rules here and there to try to make sure that a lot of his guild members are okay, or that he's kind of pushing the right thing here and there if it's like the right thing to do. Is that about right?
Correct.
Yep. His magic, he's seen here and there as kind of being almost like being able to kind of resize himself here and there so he can become like a giant of some kind, or he can kind of change different sections of his body in order to kind of morph into like different like bigger parts here and there. But he's also very versed in like pretty much every other bit of magic here and there as far as I've seen too, because I think I've seen him do bits of light magic mostly, but also there's a couple bits where he does like all kinds of other things like fire magic and lightning magic and some other things here and there. But the guy is a true like guild master. He has a mastery over like magic in its entirety, and I believe he's one of the 10 wizard saints, if I'm not mistaken.
That is correct.
Yeah, so in short, the guy is very powerful, and one of the big spells that he's widely known for is fairy law, which I believe is light magic. And if you were to execute this incredibly powerful attack, as long as you're like targeting, like it could be even like an entire like guild
Do you
hall
want me
of.
to elaborate?
Yes, could you elaborate on what fairy law is?
Fairy Law is one of the three grand fairy spells in which it targets everyone in a mass radius that the caster deems as their enemy. So anyone who is their ally is completely unaffected by the spell. All enemies are obliterated.
That's insane to even think about. Now, again, like I know with a lot of people who might have played a couple of different bits of video games here and there that you have these ultimate like attacks or something. This is essentially like one of the biggest ultimate attacks that you could possibly imagine. It basically is a kill all type of thing where, um, when he executes it, everybody who he considers as his enemy, yes, is obliterated in a big, huge, beam of light for the most part. Our next main character, or next supporting character, actually, that I want to talk about is his grandson Loxus. Um, Now, in the first 48 episodes, so well, in the first kind of half of the 48 episodes that we've seen, Loxus is essentially one of the most powerful users in Fairy Tail, and he is known for a lot of his lightning magic. And specifically, he's also known for being able to control this thing called the Thunder Palace, I believe, right?
Correct. That's something he said around Magnolia to try to get the guild. Didn't work.
Right. Yeah, no, he is essentially Makarov's grandson, and again, he's kind of one of those peoples here and there who hangs out in the background, kind of considers everything that's going on in the guild to be kind of either a waste of time or kind of stupid or something. But he does get a little bit into his head here and there about controlling the guilds in the later parts of the first season, which ends up becoming a little bit of a problem for them, at least in later parts of that. What do you think about Loxus, Courtney?
I think Loxus initially comes off as a big jerk, didn't care to help against Phantom Lord, even with Mira begging him, wasn't afraid to call out who he believed as losers, but at the end of the Battle of Fairy Tail arc, he revealed that his misguided way of thinking, he realized it was wrong. It was mainly because he was upset that Makarov kicked out his father for similar reasons, and he was blinded by that fact.
Right.
So I think there's still a bit of good in him somewhere.
Absolutely, 100%. And speaking of,
Otherwise the fairy law spell that he casted wouldn't have it would have affected everyone, and we saw that like we mentioned before, fairy law only affects people who the caster deems as their enemy. It didn't affect anybody. So deep down in his heart, even if he won't admit it, he cares for everyone.
absolutely 100%. And even like looking at like him as Makarov's grandson and whatnot, he does take after his grandfather in a lot of ways and respects in there because he grew up with him. And as a little boy, they used to get really excited to go out there and see a lot of the wizards in parades here and there. And he did acquire a lot of his grandfather's abilities. And yes, specifically, fairy law was one of them. But yeah, as you mentioned, like not being able to actually kill any of the members of the Fairy Tail Guild because deep down in his heart he is still a pretty good guy for the most part, and it's very nice to see his character growth at least over that arc, and actually to be able to see some of his abilities during that time frame. And speaking of more powerful wizards of Fairy Tail, one wizard that we also get to know in the early parts of the first season is Mira Jane, and she is wonderful but very mysterious, at least in the start. We don't know too much about her abilities other than in Sorcerer Weekly and with the magazine that's promoting a lot of the different wizarding guilds. We do see a lot of pictures of her kind of doing some modeling work, and when she's introduced, she's kind of just hanging out and kind of bartending for the guild for the most part, but we don't quite know what her abilities are until a little bit later in the show when she's revealed to be, well, her alias is the demon, actually, which comes off as
The
very
she devil.
mysterious, the she devil. Right, and could you explain a little bit about her abilities and what she's about? Because it's a little bit crazy, for sure.
Before her little sister Lizana, as we mentioned before with Natsu, before Lizana unfortunately passed away, Mira was labeled as one of the S-class wizards along with Urza and Loxus, and her takeover magic, which is the niche with her siblings, is taking over demon souls, and
Right.
we see that at the end of the Battle of Fairy Tail arc. But one of the reasons that she didn't use the takeover spell after Lizana died was because she saw what happened with Elfman after he accidentally killed her. So when Elfman was about to die, that was when her power came back out, and it was revealed that she's very badass.
No, she is. It's one of those things where I think she uses a lot with like dark magic or something because as soon as like we saw her transformation into this demon kind of character and whatnot, it was revealed that she has way more power than we originally were led to believe, and it's just insane to actually see her abilities come out to the forefront and whatnot.
Yeah, scary.
Very scary too, especially when you actually see the transformation actually take place at first and whatnot. But yeah, it's one of those things too where when we find out that she's one of the S class wizards, it's very interesting to see how we find that out because you also pointed out to me as we were watching it that there's a second floor to the Fairy Tale Guild Hall where the S class jobs usually are. And she was actually able to walk up there along with the master and several other of the S class wizards, and like that subtle hint of just being able to find out that she is an S-class wizard based upon the fact that she was up there, is one of the hidden secrets in the show, as we see. Next of our supporting cast that I want to talk about is Gajiel. What can you tell me about this guy? He is wild, but what do you think about Gajiel?
Gagio is Mr. Shooby Dooba, and like Natsu, he is a dragon slayer, specifically of the element of iron, and we are introduced to him around episode 21, 22. He is part of the enemy guild, which is known as the Phantom Lord, who is assigned to take back Lucy to her father. And there's a big battle between Natsu and Gagio. And basically, after a little while, we're like, yeah, Gagio is now part of Fairy Tail.
Oh, very, very cool. And it's so crazy because even his loyalty has kind of been tested here and there as far as whether or not he's part of the Fairy Tail guilds or part of the other secondary guild, which he's kind of infiltrating. But without spoiling it too much at the same time, um, he definitely is, at least at first, once he joins the Fairy Tail guilds, does have a little bit of a thing here and there with another guild that they're trying to find out a little bit more information of. And he's looking for somebody specifically. Who was it that he was looking for in that other guild?
He is working as a double agent, mainly for Master Makarov, to track down Master Makarov's son and Deluxe's father, Master Ivan of the Ravenclaw Guild. Raventail.
Gotcha, gotcha. Yeah, so he's looking for Ivan while this is all going down, and kind of acting, yeah, as you mentioned it, like a double agent of sorts, working for Fairy Tail. And he's a very interesting character because, yeah, his abilities are pretty much right there on par with Natsu's. So they have a long bet going here and there about like a showdown between the two of them as they are going into this. So it's one of those things where I think we can look forward to either a really good battle for a 1v1 with them, or they're going to be put in several other situations here and there in the subsequent seasons of them kind of going after a couple of different bits of evil together and being forced to work together. What can you tell us about Jalal Fernandez? Now he is a multi like faceted character that is way even deeper than I even thought, at least at first. There's a lot of different dimensions to this guy. But what can you tell me about Jalal? Just really quick.
The first time we see Jalal is as Seagrain, who is part of the Magic Council,
Right.
and we learn that him and Urza somehow have some sort of relationship that they don't want to talk about. And eventually, when we get into Urza's arc, it's revealed that Jalal is the big bad of that arc, who was once her friend that was possessed by something claiming to be Zareth. And at that point, it's revealed that Seagrain is just Jalal pretending to be a Magic Council member. Then they fight. And one of the unique things is later on in the Battle of Fairy Tail arc, we find out that a mysterious character named Mystigan has a surprisingly similar resemblance to Jalal.
Yes, and it's so crazy because Mystigan is another one of the S-class wizards of Fairy Tail, but he's very mysterious. I mean, he kind of shows up every once in a while to take maybe like an S-class job, and then you hardly ever see the guy ever again, so he kind of keeps to himself and whatnot. But towards the end of the Battle of Fairy Tail arc, when his mask was revealed at some point, or it was taken off, he has a surprising resemblance to this Jalal character. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out in the next seasons and whatnot. But yeah, Mystigan's also ungodly powerful and whatnot. He uses a lot of magic with a lot of the staffs that he carries around with him, and he's also seen as doing a lot of bits with illusion magic and whatnot. And just all around one of the like most badass and coolest characters, actually, to be honest with you.
Definitely.
For sure. And last but not least of our cast, before we get into the story and the plot of Fairy Tail, let's talk a little bit about Zareth. Now, I don't know too much about him, other than the fact that he is a dark wizard, and I believe that he has this influence that's just there. He's not quite with the rest of the worlds here and there because he probably met his defeat at some point. But his influence is all over the world here and there in the form of different monsters and various dark magic spells that he's left behind. What can you tell us a little bit about Zareth without getting too far into, like, let's say seasons 2, 3, 4 ish?
So Zareth is revealed around episode 7 as the big bad, and we don't know a lot about him. We don't know what he looks like. We don't know where he's from. All we know is that he is the like ultimate dark wizard, the ultimate black mage, and he has these books called the Books of Zareth that are basically demons, and we've seen multiple so far. We've seen Lullaby as one of the demons. We've seen Deliora as one of the demons,
Yes.
and even in the Tower of Heaven arc, we see that Jalal is trying to resurrect Zareth, and it's one of those things that you just gotta wonder, when's he gonna show up?
Right. Yeah, because throughout the at least the first season, it's one of those things where it seems like he's already been defeated at some point, but a lot of dark forces are either trying to revive him or they have powers because of his prior influence and whatnot. And again, big bad of the entire series, and just trying to see exactly what lies ahead, at least with this one. But yeah, the rest of the series is going to uh, of course, be filled with his influence and see exactly where it goes from there. And now, speaking of the plot, let's actually get into the plot and the storyline of Fairy Tail Season 1. So, Fairy Tail, in the Kingdom of Fury, and again, magic is commonplace among most of the regular folks out there, but there are certain peoples out there within the rest of the worlds that use magic as an art and kind of like lend to its creation and also the mastery here and there of the different magic arts. And those people are known as the wizards. Now, these wizards have formed various guilds that take on different jobs here and there to help people out or um, just to kind of do their own bits of work here and there for fame or fortune or whatnot. But yeah, one guild stands above all the others, and that is Fairy Tail, who just happens to be one of the most famous guilds of all the land. So good stuff over there for sure. Um, Courtney, they have a magic council of sorts, which I believe is called Era. What does the
Yes.
magic council do, and what's its function?
The Magic Council was created to maintain a sense of order within the magical world, which is seen as we've seen that Fairy Tail is rather destructive. So the Magic Council is like, all right, you have to tone it down sometimes, or we're gonna have to take some measures to tone you down ourselves.
Right. So they kind of act as like almost like the law enforcement all over the rest of the kingdom, and they're trying to make sure that they keep the guilds in check. I think they also kind of mitigate different conflicts in between different guilds here and there, or at least they try to, or make sure that they don't get too destructive with it. I mean, is that pretty much true, or?
When two guilds try to go to war with each other, it can cause major catastrophe for not only both guilds but also any nearby towns. So they try to be like, if you do that, we're gonna make sure that you have a big lesson to learn.
Right. Now they also have several different deterrents here and there, and one part of their main mission is to try to stem any sort of like dark magic that comes up. And I know that one of their main unspoken missions is to try to, at all costs, make sure that Zareth is never resurrected, and also to stop him at all costs. Um, they have a weapon of sorts. Would you be able to tell me a little bit about the weapon that they use? Um, Going to the Tower of Heaven arc.
One of the Magic Council's weapons is called the Etherion Blast, in which it is a satellite square that can center itself on any part of the continent and basically can destroy an entire like portion of a continent in like seconds. And it's extremely powerful. It's been said that by Urza that the amount of power within an Etherion Blast doesn't even match up to if you could gather all of the wizards in Fiore.
I know, isn't that crazy? Yeah, and we've seen this weapon even used in season one. And again, they use it kind of as a deterrent here and there, to try to make sure that nothing can resurrect Xerath and whatnot. But we'll get into that in a little bit as we kind of get into this one. But yeah, the show starts out pretty much with Natsu and Happy on a train, heading out to a coastal town, because he's in search of somebody who's claiming to be Salamander, and we find out from their conversation here and there that Natsu is indeed looking for his adoptive father, Igniel. Um, and as, of course, they find out that the person who is posing as Salamander is an imposter, really, they run into Lucy Heartfilia, who essentially is there kind of to make her way towards Fairy Tail in order to join the guild and whatnot. And as Natsu learns of her desire to join the Fairy Tail Guild, when they out the imposter Salamander, and Natsu reveals himself to actually be Salamander, he does invite Lucy to the guild, and from there, it just kind of takes over from there. The rest of the story is told in the kind of realm of arcs as we kind of reveal a lot of the different characters and go into a lot of their different backstories and whatnot. But yeah, the first like really like big arc I want to say, aside from like the introductory type of episodes, is the Lullaby arc. Am I kind of correct with that one, or?
The first main arc that has like its own sense of purpose is the lullaby arc. You are correct.
Gotcha, gotcha. Yeah, because the first couple ones are usually like a couple of episodes each in order to kind of get the introductions kind of going, and to see Natsu and Lucy on their first mission and whatnot. But we do see the Lullaby arc come into play as Urza gets into the picture, and the main cast is pretty much complete at that point as we see all of our heroes working together. And essentially, they're going out to investigate Eisenwald, which is a dark guild that was banned by the Magic Council, and it's essentially trying to employ the use of Lullaby over at the guild leaders meeting. I remember, if I remember that correctly.
Correct.
Next one is a arc that I want you to talk about a little bit about the Galuna Island arc. What can you tell us about the Galuna Island arc?
The Galuda Island arc basically starts with Natsu and Happy deciding we're gonna go on an S-class job even though we're not allowed to, and let's drag Lucy along too because we know that there's a gold gate key as a reward. There's no way she can say no. So they're about to go. Then Gray is like, "I'm here to stop you," and then eventually he has to go along. And during that whole thing, we learned that there are these people who are being affected by a spell called the Moon Drip, which is trying to resurrect Deliora, one of the demons from Xerath's books. And that Deliora is linked with Gray and his past, which is how we learn a lot about him and major character development through him. It's amazing. It's an amazing arc in general.
For sure, yeah, and a lot of the arcs that you'll see, at least in subsequent order, is that a lot of times they do expand upon a character's backstory, and yeah, finding out about Gray's arc during this uh, entire ordeal is that yeah, it's actually one of the coolest things to see, and to kind of get like a lot of the emotional backstory that he's been brought up here and there with, and like going into the next arc, which I believe is the Phantom Lord arc.
Correct.
That one is even crazier because by the time they get back from Galuna Island, you think that things would kind of go back to normal for our heroes, but we find out that another guild launches an attack against Fairy Tail, which is absolutely insane to even think about, as the Phantom Lord Guild launches an attack on Fairy Tail. So with this one, we see so many different members of like a group of four. What was the group of four called again that was part of that whole
The they were called the Element Four, and it was basically Juvia, and then three others, and then above even the Element Four stood Gagio.
right, because he's kind of like a little bit like, well, he's the leader of the Elemental Four. I mean, it's kind of like he's, well, or is he, is it fair to say he's the leader, or is he like just a step above them
He's
almost?
he's above them.
Gotcha, gotcha. Yeah, so for the Elemental Four, you see a lot of different battles here and there between a lot of the fairy tale wizards and a lot of these guys, and you see exactly what happens with like a guild versus guild type of thing with a lot of the different aspects of what could go wrong with it. And we do see Master Makarov get sick a little bit with this one. How exactly does he go down again?
One of the element four, also labeled as the strongest of the element four, Arya, uses a powerful wind spell on him called the Drain spell, which drains the user of all of their magic power. And magic power to a wizard is basically like air for normal humans, in which they need it to survive. And because Master Makarov was so strong, the effects of the Drain spell were even more severe. But luckily, at the end of the arc, we see that Mistigan was there to gather it all together.
For sure. It's so lucky that we get to see him over there and whatnot. And uh, there was a couple of different oh, what was it again? These big giant machines that were deployed here and there. He takes care of a bunch of them like outside of that whole like ordeal. Is it?
Uh, there are multiple branches to the Phantom Lord arc. We took the main fairy tale group took out the main one with the master and the big like five, which are the element for Engagio. But Michigan notes that there are a lot of other branches across Fiore that are connected with Phantom Lord, and he takes them all out by himself and shows it off by all of the flags that he's collected.
Isn't that insane though? I mean, because what he takes out a lot of the branches and whatnot, and where our heroes are struggling just with the one branch. I mean, I think it's arguably like the main branch for sure, but Mystigan just takes out all the other ones by himself pretty much, which crazy to even think about, but at the same time, like he just does it, so pretty crazy, huh?
Yeah.
No, for sure. And then right after that, we get a small arc, which is the Loki arc, in which we find out a little bit more so about Loki himself and about his backstory and whatnot. Loki, at least, is seen as kind of a womanizer a bit in Fairy Tale and kind of like the ultimate bachelor, if you will, kind of guy who's a little bit of a player in Fairy Tale. But we find out later that his powers are a little bit unique in the sense that he actually, spoiler alert, guys, spoiler alert is in fact, he is actually a celestial spirit who is serving another wizard fairy tale. What can you tell me about the wizard that he was serving?
Um, Loki was originally the spirit of the lion, Leo. Um, he was contracted to a wizard named Karen, who was part of the Blue Pegasus Guild. And after trying to void his contact with Karen, as well as another spirit named Ares, he keeps himself out in the real world for 3 months, and Karen is forced to go on a job even though she doesn't have enough power to summon another spirit, and she ends up getting killed. And due to that, it was an indirect killing on his part, so the Celestial Spirit King bans him, and then Lucy flat out says, "You're wrong." And he comes out and is like, "Tell me why I'm wrong." He's like, he was like, look, he was protecting him, and the Spirit King was like, yeah, I guess so.
It's so fun to see exactly her pleading with the celestial spirit king and trying to like lessen his sentence and whatnot, but he ultimately ends up giving Lucy his key and pledges himself to her as one of her celestial spirits. So whenever she calls upon him, he comes out to help her fight, essentially, and whatnot. So that's a fun arc. It's a little bit emotional for sure to see exactly how it all goes down. And the end of it is actually really, really nice to see here and there with all of it coming together. But this leads into our next arc, which is the Tower of Heaven arc, which we actually find out a lot more about Urza and her backstory as we kind of go into a lot of what she has kind of come up with in her past, working pretty much as like a slave labor type of person and trying to build the Tower of Heaven in order to actually get that all going. But she also was working with a couple of friends of hers, and one of those friends just happened to be Joe Law and whatnot. What were your thoughts about the Tower of Heaven arc and how it all went down?
The Tower of Heaven arc is one of my favorite arcs in the entirety of Fairy Tail, because of its huge influence on the rest of the series, because it comes back not only in like Urza's play, but in plays that we will soon see in later seasons. And one of my favorite things about that is there aren't spoilers. There aren't a lot of deaths in Fairy Tail, but in the Tower of Heaven, we do find out that one of Urza's close friends, Simon, actually does die, and that's like a huge realization moment that this is a comedy shonen where a lot of people don't die, and then someone just died.
Right. Yeah, because usually in like so many of the fights and battles that a lot of the characters get into, at least throughout the series, it's almost like in a sense a video game to where when somebody is defeated in battle, they kind of just faint or they lose consciousness or the whole bit, but they don't actually die. In the Tower of Heaven arc, Simon dies, which kind of like raises the stakes about the entirety of the universe and whatnot, and saying that you can actually have somebody basically get killed in one of these fights, and trying to make sure that everything kind of works out for our heroes and whatnot. But yeah, Tower of Heaven, definitely for sure. One of the biggest arcs in this series, and it's one of the things too where yeah, it's very fun to watch too. And Courtney's got her cat. Courtney, what's your cat's name again?
Mwah. My cat's name is Armani, and he is my little bundle of happiness. Isn't that right, Armani?
Yeah, there you go for sure. And just like Natsu is happy and whatnot, Armani is Courtney's version of happy and whatnot.
My little ball of happiness.
Yeah, for sure. And now, last arc, but definitely not least, the Battle of Fairy Tail arc. This is an arc that was absolutely insane to even think about. So, okay, after the Tower of Heaven, which was insane in and of itself and whatnot, we find out that Loxus decides that, oh, hey, the old man Makarov, my grandfather, is a little bit too old to run Fairy Tail. I'm going to start to take over this thing, and I'm going to do so with my band of friends, and try to make sure that we can kind of root out a lot of the different weak points of Fairy Tail, and then we can actually make the guild a whole lot stronger and whatnot. So he initiates a fight that's essentially like a bunch of different infighting with Fairy Tail and trying to pit everybody against each other. And he puts a timer on this as well in activating the Thunder Palace, which has a bunch of these different orbs of lightning essentially take the sky and the town they're in. And essentially, after a certain point in time, those things would go off and everybody would get electrocuted, and it's just a whole bunch of craziness and whatnot. Courtney, so what are the people that are in his band of allies? Because there's a specific group of like 3 wizards. What were they called again?
They were called Loxus's personal guard, the Thunder Legion, consisting of Freed, Evergreen, and Bixlow, all of which who have these weird powers with their eyes. And they're they're like the 3 who during the Battle of Fairy Tail they have to take them down in order to get to Loxus. And once you get to Loxus, most of the other people of the Fairy Tail Guild have already been taken down either by each other, by the Thunder Palace, or by the Thunder Legion. And at that point, it's just Natsu, Urza, and Gajiel, which Urza is busy trying to destroy the Thunder Palace, which she takes out 200 of them on her own.
Which again is a testament to exactly how powerful, how powerful Urza really is. And it's one of those things where we see Loxus's power throughout this entire arc for the most part. In the last few episodes, it's really highlighted as he is also revealed to be a dragon or having dragon slayer magic, at least as he's fighting Natsu and Gajiel as well, which And again, a lot of these battle sequences, guys, are absolutely insane. You watch them, and it's seriously one of the best animes as far as like watching a lot of different bits of action and whatnot. So as we're going through this arc, um, we also see another fight happen, which we see a little bit of Mystigan's power. What can you tell me about that little scuffle here and there between Loxus and Mystigan?
Before that whole ordeal, all we knew about Mystigan was that he was an S-class wizard. He put people to sleep whenever he went to the guild because he didn't want them to see his face, and he's very powerful. That was it. And then Mystigan comes in and is like, Loxus, you better bring down the Thunder Palace. Like, why don't you make me Mystigan? Or should I say? And then Mystigan is like, all right, no, that's too far. In which he reveals he has um illusion magic along with his staffs that create magic circles of different power levels. And before he has the chance to reveal too much of his power, Urza and Natsu both appear.
Right. Yeah, because they get onto the scene here and there as they're making their own way to Loxus, and like Freed with his rune magic is kind of imposing different rules here and there about a lot of the different fairy tale members. So that entire arc, in order to actually get people to fight each other, Freed is essentially locking people into almost different zones here and there, so that they're kind of forced to fight each other if they want to leave those zones. And it's very weird to see him try to write and then rewrite the rules as he kind of goes along with this one, because yeah, he is a part of the Thunder Legion, to be sure. But even then, we also see another fight take place between Freed and Mira Jane, which is actually pretty cool to see, isn't there?
Definitely. That was the big reveal of Mira's powers. It's probably my favorite moment in the entire arc.
And if I'm not mistaken, she'd actually been kind of hiding away her powers for like a couple of years. Is that right?
I think it was 2 or 3 years. It's she didn't use the powers after Lizana died.
True. Yeah, and I know that like she kind of essentially like swore off using her powers for the most part, but she kind of had to at that point in order to actually like defeat Freed and whatnot. So that whole arc is just absolutely insane to watch, and again, like this show is just absolutely incredible, and all the fight sequences, all the emotional moments, um, the different bits of character growth and whatnot between a lot of the different characters we have in the show is just absolutely insane. But while we do that, before we get to our conclusion, let's talk about the production quality and soundtrack of this anime. Now, again, as we're covering the first 48 episodes of Fairy Tail, we're only going into the accepted season 1, so it's really only about a focus on the 2009-2010 episodes that aired around that time. So, in just taking a look at the different art styles here and there for what we've seen for the 2009-2010 animes in comparison, this anime does a very good job of keeping up with it. Now, I know that for a lot of shonen anime, and especially so for like ones like Sailor Moon or Dragon Ball Z, a lot of times A1 Studios, who did Fairy Tail, um, they had to make kinds of decisions here and there too about whether or not to make something as crazy over the top, or just keep the less dramatic moments here and there to a sort of lesser production value for the most part. Does this happen in this case? No, absolutely not. They do every single one of the fight sequences justice, and as far as the diversity of the cast and whatnot, this anime does an incredible job of that. And the reason why I say that, and again, Courtney, feel free to agree or disagree with me on this one, but because each one of the characters has such a wide range of different abilities, with the celestial magic from Lucy, Urza's requip magic, Natsu's fire, and Gray's ice, you see a lot of different bits of opportunity for the art department to try and just go crazy with the production value of this one and creating all sorts of different magic sequences here and there during the show. What do you think about a lot of the different bits of art and magic that are used throughout the entirety of the show?
I realized that myself. A lot, basically every type of magic in the show has its own unique quality. Lucy's celestial spirit magic is in a category called holder type magic. Natsu's Dragon Slayer abilities are lost magic, in which it's not something that you can like just learn, or you have to like actually, it has like these lost properties from ancient times. Urza's magic, she's the only one who can re-equip armor, and Gray's magic, basically, he has the ability to make whatever he wants out of ice.
Right. And in seeing all this go down, even with all the different curses and monsters and different villains that they run into throughout the series here and there, when you go into light magic, dark magic, the whole bit and stuff, the art that goes along with it, and it's the entire scale of this entire project as far as the production is concerned, they did a great job with it considering the time and whatnot.
Definitely, I agree.
Oh, for sure. And as far as the soundtrack is concerned, is it one of those animes that has the best background soundtrack? I think it actually has a pretty fair background soundtrack. I mean, most of the action sequences have the appropriate filler music here and there to kind of go in between the scenes. And for me, a lot of the more like dramatic scenes, in contrast to a lot of the different like, let's say, homely scenes where they're just kind of like hanging out in the guild hall. A lot of the filler that's going on in the background is actually pretty good for the most part. My favorite types of music are usually being played usually when they're hanging out in the guild hall and trying to just kind of make little conversations and stuff right there, or whether or not they're like fighting in the background or something like that, or just having a good time or whatnot. But the big standouts as far as the music is concerned, at least with this anime, is in its openings and closings, of which there are many of those. What do you think about the opening and closings of this anime?
I think that progressively the openings and endings get a lot better. Of course, Snow Fairy, the first opening, will always have that unique feeling that gives it the whole fairy tale vibe. And Don't Say Goodbye, it's the whole, it sums up everything perfectly, the whole aspect of it, the fairies that dance in the beginning of the opening. It just sums up the series perfectly.
I think so too. I mean, even if you like play Snow Fairy like at all, like seriously blindfold me at all, just in any case and whatnot, and play that song for me, I would instantly, within like 2 seconds, know that's Fairy Tale, just because it's so iconic. And as soon as you hear that song or any of the openings and endings and whatnot, you know you're in for something really, really good. And if it's one of those things where if you're going to invest a lot of time and energy into a lot of the different openings and endings, they did a fantastic job with those ones, I think.
Definitely.
All right, guys, really quick, we're gonna get up to my conclusion and whatnot. So as far as this goes, Fairy Tale has been absolutely wonderful. I know that we've only watched the first 48 episodes as far as the Discord watch parties are concerned. And we're going to be coming out with a lot of different additional episodes as far as what we're going to be doing over here on YouTube for reviews too. But all in all, I'd say as far as review and score from me goes, I would give Fairy Tail a solid 4.4 out of 5, placing it into my master class, recommending that you guys go out and buy this anime for your collection. It's one of those ones that should stack your shelf at some point, and if it's not in your anime shelf at some point in your life, you are doing the game wrong and whatnot, so you absolutely have to go out and get yourself a copy of this season one. Just because it is so iconic, it is so beloved by fans around the entire world, and it's one of those things where I wish, really do wish that I could have seen it way before we're finally getting into it right now. But yes, no, for all of you guys out there, highly recommend this anime to all of you guys. What about you, Courtney? If you were to give it a score, it could be out of 5 or it could be A, B, C, D, F or something like that. What would you rate Fairy Tale?
I would personally rate Fairy Tail a 4.8 out of 5 because it's not a perfect story, and of course it always has its little flaws here and there, but the overall emotion of basically when you watch it, you basically feel like you're part of the guild itself, and that connection between the show and you and the problems that the other characters have to go through might be able to be related to. That's something that's always gotten me in my heart, and that's why I always rate it so high.
For sure. And of course, Courtney is showcasing all of her Good stuff over today. Posters, t-shirts, and all this other good stuff.
Yeah, I got a little necklace on too. So to see, but
Oh my god, that's freaking epic. Let's go. It's even got the fairy tale symbol on it too. That's awesome.
yep.
No, guys, for real, she is much more of an expert on fairy tale than I am, and she knows what's coming up for the next seasons and whatnot. So we're gonna be finding a little bit more about the show for sure. And I would also like to say really quick point. Hold on, that was my alarm going on. Oh my god, we get so many alarms and whatnot just because and whatnot. No, it's my 8:30 alarm. It's like, oh hey, you should get ready for a stream or something like that just because it's almost 9 o'clock. But one final point before I even end is that I think that this anime, and again, feel free to chime in with any sort of additions or feels and all the good stuff and whatnot, but I think that this anime is actually really good for both guys and girls. It could be marketed towards any and both audiences here and there too. So it's not just like a guy's anime. It can be for girls too, like for real too. And it's one of those things where there's heroes like Natsu and Gray for sure for the guys, and Lucy and Urza, such big inspirations. And it doesn't even matter if you're a guy or girl, you can definitely find something that you love about this anime. What do you think about that, Courtney?
It's for guys, it's for gals, for our non-binary pals.
Absolutely, 100%. And again, like anybody can really get into this anime. So if it helps in your decision, if you've not already seen this anime beforehand, to actually going out and checking it out, again, would highly recommend it. And if you've already seen the anime and have enjoyed a review, make sure you hit that subscribe button down there. Also, be sure to give this video a like and a comment and whatnot. Courtney, again, thank you so much for your time over here. I really did appreciate it.
Definitely, Doug. If you ever need me, you always know where to find me.
For sure. And again, we are going to be getting into Danganronpa 2 and finishing up the chapter 6 stuff. And holy crap, I cannot wait to see exactly where this goes. And it's going to be absolutely insane. What do you think?
I think that you're not ready for what's to come.
All right, guys. And with that, we will see you soon in the next video. Bye bye.